time. But as I say, we've got a brilliant relationship with Nintendo, and they were always keen to see what we were producing. And when we were at the point where we were going to show the game, I can't remember whether we were going to display it on the floor or whether it was just to show to Nintendo. But we had a meeting about it, and I can remember being in this meeting. The show was going on in the background, and we were behind Cafe Mario, and this looks great, but we feel it's very similar to Star Fox because you've got a lead character here that's going through space, because we changed the idea of the time traveling so that you're landing on another planet. So we've already got that, and we're working together. How about we form some kind of marriage between our characters and your universe, and we expand on it? And it worked really well because Star Fox was obviously a superhero that went into different galaxies, and so he could quite easily have stumbled across this dinosaur planet. And so we had a discussion about it while we were in America. Came back to the UK, and then the ball had already started rolling because they were arranging a trip for myself and the lead designer and the lead software engineer to go over to Japan and discuss what we needed to do to make what was already quite an established story work within the introduction of the Star Fox characters and the whole Star Fox universe. And so there was myself, Lee, Phil, and there was Shigeru Miyamoto and Imamura. We spent a week just drawing pictures and saying, how can we make what's the reason that what's the whole reason behind the story? And a lot of the gameplay was it wasn't really going to change. We wanted to add the addition of the shooting levels because there were no spaceships flying around. There was no sort of none of the battles in space that you see in the final game. And so we had to incorporate a lot of that. And then we had guys come over also to the UK to spend time with us, develop the game as it got towards the end of the product. But it just sort of fell into place. Everything worked well because of this whole space universe theme. And I think we did a pretty good job, as I said in my interview the other day. But the characters, I think it would have been silly to have had another main character in space that looked like a fox but wasn't a fox, when you had the opportunity to let a lot more people know about it with Star Fox and really get it known. And then of course it went on so far that there was some rewrites to the story and design, and when it gets so far through development, you're looking at the end of the life of the N64, and you don't want a game to come out on the N64 when it's just about to sort of kick the bucket and the GameCube's coming out. So it made sense to start re-enhancing the graphics and adding a lot more features and getting it ready for GameCube. And that's the way it that's how the transition went. It was all to do with time. So it was quite a long project to work on. Towards the end of it, I got to a point where most of the graphics were done, and we'd got more animators, because when I was first on the game, I was doing a lot of animation, character design, and model building. Whereas when we built the team up, because it was now we'd got Nintendo behind it, we could afford to put more people actually on the product. We'd got specialized animators and concept artists, and so the whole thing was going up a step, in quality. But then I was starting to take a little bit more of an overseeing role on some of the games, and so I was actually moved over onto Perfect Dark Zero then to start looking at how the graphics were on that game. But so I came off Dinosaur Planet shortly before it was finished. So the game that I saw on the N64 demo the other day, I'd forgotten all of that had ever even existed. So it was quite a nice surprise to see it.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring that up too. It's like the editorial you wrote didn't just come out of nowhere. It's because essentially a ROM image of your demo got onto the internet. And I guess my question is, I mean, what does that mean to you to see that? I mean, it seems like you've expressed delight in it, but is there also some sense of, someone seeing your high school homework,
It's no, I think everybody knows what Star Fox is, and everybody knows that it was originally Dinosaur Planet. And so I think it's good to see how things came to be. Um, it was a long time ago, and as I say, I'd love to see some of the older demos. And see, at the time, I think we were really pushing that N64. And when you look at it now and see the odd screenshot of it, it's like it looks really good quality, but it would have suffered as a game had it had been on N64, because I think we would wanted to do so much more than we could have allowed ourselves to do on it because of the size and just the capacity and limitations of the machine, the frame rate, everything, and the lack of audio that we got when we got to the GameCube. It's just it's nice to see it, but I'd like to see more. If I'm honest, I'd like to see more of these old ROMs appearing. So just jog your memories. The thing is, I took a break from the industry for a good 10 years. And I always said when I came back into the industry, when I joined Playtonic Games, it's like I've closed my eyes for 10 years and I've opened them up, and all of a sudden we've got self-shadowing, we've got anti-aliasing, we've got perfect shadows on the ground, all the things that we wanted when I was last working on maybe the N64 version of Dino Planet. I was like, oh, wouldn't it be great if a tail cast a shadow on her legs? That's the next step. That'll never happen. And I always look at it. I mean, when I got the car and I was driving it under the tunnel in Diddy Kong Racing, I spent ages trying to make the lights stay on when they went underneath and you press your brake lights and they came on. It was telling it not to light those decals on the back of the car. And you were just playing around with colors of lights. There was a lot of, I think we were just moving into an age where we were getting high definition video on TV, so nature videos, lots of reality shows and documentaries were showing like Yellowstone Park, and they're showing it at different times of the day where the colors of the light were hitting the trees, and we were trying to simulate all of this stuff and get the time of day. We've got the dawn lighting now, and then we've got the dusk lighting, and we wanted all those things, and then they never seemed to come because the machine was never fast enough. We could do a little bit of it, and as I say, I closed my eyes, 10 years, came back in the industry, it's all there. But then when I saw this and it came on the video, it was like I sort of went back to sleep and I saw where I last sort of stepped off the video games industry, if you like, or not that long before it, when we were limited to the capabilities of the N64 with no self-shadowing and no soft shadows. But there was always a way to make something look a bit special. I mean, on Zelda, they did those lovely shadows that came off the feet on Link. They were those like sort of long cast shadows. It wasn't a true shadow, but Nintendo were great at doing that. They're always coming up with a way of creating a nice effect and doing it in a way that is often probably to save on the processing power or something like that. And we used to just chuck things at it and say, well, no, it's going to use proper full self-shadowing, and then she'd just chug along. So, but yeah, it was great because when we did get to GameCube, it started to look a lot prettier. But it wasn't looking so bad on N64.
So, Dave, do you have a sense of nostalgia looking back at your old work like this as well?
Oh, completely. And also, the in-game music I thought worked a lot better on the N64. We developed the tools for the N64 for the audio for everyone, for Robin and Grant and Graham. We'd really pushed it quite far, and it was really sounding quite nice. And also, just as we talk about graphics having a kind of fuzzy edge, the audio always had a fuzzy edge, and it blended really nicely. And then when we went to the GameCube, it was a black box system. We couldn't edit it much. Everything had to be done individually. It took a lot of work to get what we had on the N64 and replicate that on the GameCube. The good thing was, though, because it was streamed from disc, it meant that all the cutscenes could have music as good as we could possibly make it, which was a nice relief. We weren't restricted to just using MIDI. And that was a huge relief, but it was a compromise, really. So the in-game stuff probably didn't sound quite as nice as the N64, the presentation stuff, that was definitely a step up. And yeah, it's nice to look back at the N64 because we did spend quite a lot of time on it, and it brings back all the memories from what we were doing at that kind of time as well. So it's very interesting to look back. Although I don't know, it's probably best when you don't look back. It's nice to see the finished thing. To see something in development is a different, as you say, it's sort of unfinished homework.
Well, it almost strikes me as just hearing the way you're both talking about that game and the difference between 64 and what you get out of the GameCube and stuff like that. It's almost like looking at this relic, right?
Yes.
This prototype. It's almost like um it's like symbolic of this major change at the company. It seems like it's sort of like the last gasp of the 64 before you entered what some might call modern game development even.
Yeah, and also, Kev, was it the last one we did for Nintendo as well, or the last original one before
Yeah, I
we?
think so. I
Yeah,
think we still ended up doing didn't we do Perfect Dark on Game Boy, a couple of the things for DS and things like that. But I'd left
yeah,
the company then, so I couldn't really say. But yeah, it was the last. I'd say it was the last Nintendo game that we were working
yeah.
on.
So the last big project we did for Nintendo as well. So there's a lot of reminiscing. It was I always enjoyed working on the Nintendo stuff, and the fact that we weren't going to be doing that going forward at Rare um, seems somehow quite sad, really.
Well, let's not end on a bummer here.
I mean, we did so many games on that system, and right from the beginning with Blast Core, we were doing some really different stuff. And
Yeah,
Banjo Kazooie came along, and it's just so funny. And I think Diddy Kong Racing. I love working on Killer Instinct. It was my favorite game because I was a big fighting game enthusiast. But Diddy Kong Racing, if I could wind back to a time at all in game development when we were having a great time and really enjoying the game that we were working on, because that whole team loved racing games and we were all into Formula One then. And so on a Sunday afternoon, you'd get in there and go, let's have a quick bash round level one on this because we've just watched Damon Hill or whatever. And it was just a brilliant environment to work in. We were expanding to different barns because the company was getting bigger. And so we were getting better working environments, purposely converted barns on this farmyard that you had a hole upstairs and a downstairs, and we've got our own key passes to go into these high secure areas and work on our games. And there were all these different projects going on in different areas of the building, and you didn't see what everybody else was producing unless you had any reason to sort of liaison with maybe the lead on this team or whatever. And so it was a nice surprise whenever you saw everybody else's game. And that N64 era was a great time because you were just seeing all of these, oh, look at Diddy Kong Racing, look at Banjo, and look at Dream, and everything was looking great on there. It was a nice time, and I would definitely wind back to the DKR. And also Dave and I had a great time in Japan there, didn't we? That was a brilliant time. We went to space.
it was.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a good time.
Yeah.
So, Kev, you've mentioned more than once here, and also in your editorial, that you kind of hope people will dig up more material like this. Is this something that you've? I mean, I would think that really what that comes down to is connections to those who might still have material like this. Is this something that you've put any effort into, like going through your old contacts just to see if people held
No,
on to things?
it was just a surprise when I saw it on the internet the other day. And so I only recently got into the whole retro gaming scene. I started following Metal Jesus Rocks and everything like that on YouTube now, and I see what people are collecting. And I started going to all of these. I have to say, as I said, stepped out and then came back in, and I kind of forgot all about video games because